So we're here for another art class, and we've been drawing, and we're going to draw today uh, a skull. Okay, let's draw an egg-like shape first, very lightly on your paper. At the top of this egg shape, let's draw a circle where the bottom of the circle uh, lands halfway between the top and the bottom. And then what we want to do, let's draw a light line down the middle, just so that we know where everything is. And we want both sides of this skull to be equal. It looks kind of like an acorn, the way we're doing it today. You don't have to do it this way, but I don't know, I just feel like this may be a simpler way for you to see the skull, because when I look at the skull, I see the circle. I see this big circle. Now the eyes is going to be about right here in the, well, actually, the eyes could actually even be lower, but we're going to do it right here at the bottom of that circle. And notice I'm bending this line because I want the skull to look like it's round. I'm going to bend this line here. And then for the nose, the line is going to be bent in the opposite direction. And the nose could, and the nose may not go here. I'm going to make changes. And then the mouth is going to be around here somewhere, and it's bent in the opposite direction as well. I may take the eyes up higher. I may take the nose down lower. And the reason I'm doing this, I just want to get an idea where everything is, but I can change everything. So I'm going to make another line on top of this line here for the eyes. Top of the eyes, maybe. So what I'm doing, just looking at where the basic shapes are, the way I see it right now. And let's sketch it in without a lot of detail, and then we'll go in and put details later. So we can't approach this skull the way we would a face. We know this middle line is where the nose and the bridge of the nose. So this bottom line for where the eyes might be, we're going to see that as the bridge of the nose, okay? This bottom line here. And this center line here is the nasal bone, the nose bone. It's like the top of the nose bone. I'm still sketching lightly. So this would be the bridge of the nose. This is the top of the nose bone. And so now we're going to draw the sockets for the eyes. And we're not going to talk about we're not going to use words like orbital notch, orbital notch. And we're not going to use scientific terms. But we're going to draw, it's kind of like drawing sunglasses. A large opening for where the eyes sit. And the corner of the brow, this opening goes all the way to the corner of the brow. It looks kind of like sunglasses. And we do the same on the opposite side. Now there's some space between the nasal bone and this eye socket or orbital. And you have to look, you have to use your eyes. And what I see may look different than what you see. But it does look like some sunglasses. and there's an opening there. And when we are drawing the face, we want to think about these things. Now, the skull is very difficult to draw, and something that's even more difficult than the skull is the skeleton. So we draw these things in order to teach ourselves how to draw. Okay, that's why we're drawing them. So this needs to be large. These nose bones, it goes all the way out. You can touch your own face. Let's look at this camera here. If you touch your brow, you can feel this, they call it, well, I'm not going to tell you what it's called, but the edge of this eye socket, you can feel that bone there, right? Can you feel that? And it protrudes forward. Then when you run your hand down the side, you can feel a little notch there. And that's where your face begins to go back in space. So this area marks the front of your face. So your cheeks and all that, the side of your face where your ear is, it's going back in space. It's not on the same plane, not on the same level. Okay? And that's why this needs to be wide. It don't need to be small. These eyeballs, these eye sockets, they need to be wide. As wide as the face. Think of it being as wide as the face. So they're huge. That's why I say they look like sunglasses. Then on this left one here, it's my left, but the right orbital, or the right eye socket, there's a little line that curves in. That's that bone that we just felt. And it's the same thing on the left side, or the right side. See this little area here, that's a bone. And this bone comes down around this bone here. It also, this bridge, the bridge of this bone comes down around the outside of the eye socket. And then there's some things happening. I mean, this is beautiful architecture. And I'm going to try not to get too detailed. I may draw more detail than I'm talking. So one thing I'm going to do now, I'm going to stop here and measure. I like this, I sort of like the size of this bone here, this eye socket here. It's slanted. This line here is slanted. I'm going to measure by putting the edge of the point of my pencil on the left-hand side. Then I'm going to put my finger on the right-hand side, see how wide that is. And then I'm going to make sure that this is the right size over here. And as I thought, I made this one smaller. And maybe it should be smaller. Remember, I mean, I'm still learning too, okay? So that's why we measure, we call that measuring. And we change things. So this line here, I had brought this line in too much. So I'm going to erase that so you can see. A nice soft brush, a wash brush, make sure the brush is dry. It's real good for when you erase to get a lot of the extra rubber off your paper. Now I can see where the bridge starts better. It's probably, it's too low because I'm measuring everything against everything else. Now I'm looking at the skull and I'm seeing where this bridge is in relationship to this bone right here. And the same for the other side. I'll measure the top. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. And remember, when you're drawing and when you're sketching like this is great exercise. Sometimes these turn into, I would suggest you use your good paper when you're doing stuff like this, because it may turn into a really nice drawing. Now we know that this nose is kind of like a triangle shape. We already have this circle here, and the end of this opening for the nose cavity is going to be around the bottom of this circle. But I'm not trying to draw what I know, I'm trying to draw what I see. I'm mixing what I see with what I know. So I know that there's a line that comes around this eye socket, and it curves right here. The same thing on the opposite side, right underneath the eye socket. There's a bone there. And you can kind of feel that bone too. If you feel the corner under your eye, look at this camera here, you feel the corner of your eye and touch it hard, you can feel that bone. And then rub your fingers down and you see where it gets a little soft, where the muscles are. Okay, and it goes kind of back in space. My cheeks are right here, my cheekbone. I can feel my cheekbones. So you have to press kind of hard to feel it, to feel that bone. You can see wherever it gets soft, then that's going to be like muscle and fascia and all that kind of stuff. Well, muscle, we'll just say muscle. Flesh. And then this line kind of curves down like that and back around. I want to get that. So now there's a bone that separates the nasal. So you have two different sides of your nose. You can't feel that bone. It's way back in your face. So you have one side for the right nostril and one side for the left nostril. Now there's some lines that curve. This bone is curvy. They don't curve the same way though. It's not the mirror image. I'm just going to shade in here a little bit. And from my point of view, I can see some of the things that's going on inside the nostril. I'm just going to indicate that that's going back in space. There's a bone behind this bone here. Then it goes back into your body, a deep cavity there. That's in the back. And there's one over here in the back too. I'm not going to pick that skull up, but one day I'll pick the skull up so you can see what I'm looking at. So the more you know, the more you see. You draw what you see first, and that depends on what you know. If you draw what you know first, then that's going to mess with what you see. Underneath the nose, I made this line. Remember, we made a line that curved for the mouth. This space is going to be a little wider here because it goes all the way down to your gums. Your gums, it turns into your gums. So I put it like that. This area here. And it begins to go back in space. That's why we made that line curve. We made it bend. We bent the line. Because the skull is round. It's oval. So I'm measuring everything with my eyes. So I'm trying to figure out where the cheekbone is. I know that there's space between here and where the cheekbone begins. Here and there, where it ends, rather. I'm going back up to this orbital, this eye socket. There's a bone that comes around like this. See that bone, that shape? If you look at the picture, I think you can see that bone because behind here, there's shading. It's darker. I'm only using one pencil so far. And then there's a bone that comes out like this. It's kind of sort of dramatic and falls down like that at an angle. And you can see it on this, my right, the skull's left side. You can see it's more prominent. You can see that bone that flares out, the little bone there. Then it comes back like here. This is where the jaw is going to connect to the cheek. This little bone right there. There's like a little hinge area there. See that shape? Now remember, when making art, sometimes you have to exaggerate this line here and always be willing to change. I'm going to make this area a little longer because I think it's going to accentuate this shape better if I make it longer. Gonna make this cheekbone a little thinner. Come back around. Now everything begins moving forward in space. See that, this line here. I'm drawing these lines so that you can see that it's making things look like it's moving forward in space. So remember, I say when you sketch in the main shape, it don't mean that you're not a slave to that shape. It just gives you an idea where everything belongs. But you're making changes with what you see and how you see. Now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to shade a little bit of this so, to remind me of what's happening. Some of you might not want to shade this yet, but I will, because it's the way I do things. And every artist do things differently. Every artist don't draw the same way. And we don't see the same way. Even though we're looking at the same thing, we're seeing something slightly different. So I'm trying to decide the length of these teeth. See, these curving, bending lines make this look more like it's kind of like 3D or whatever, what have you. And this is the front of the chin here, right underneath the mouth. The teeth, well, the gum, this is gum, I'm sorry. This is where the bottom teeth will end up. Right there. I'm marking that so I can remember this is coming forward. So my lines remind me of what's happening in space. Then the cheekbone comes down here. And these bones are sort of wavy and jagged in some areas. I'm going to draw the teeth in a few minutes when I feel like it's time. So I want to get this opening here. There's a little curvy line there, and there's an S curve here. And there's deep space here. I propped this skull up on some styrofoam and paper so that we get a good angle. So I'm just going to shade this in so that you know that this is a deep space there. It's open. The space is open. Same thing here. And I think I'll shade that too so that you know there's a cavity. It's open. There's nothing there. So this here would be the jawbone. This would be the cheekbone. The jawbone's behind the cheekbone. It's like a hinge. And the jawbone comes down. This bone, the jawbone is very hard. Remember, there's a story of Samson that killed, I forgot how many thousand men with a jawbone of an ass or a donkey. See that curved line there? So try to stay loose when you're drawing. Try not to tense up. You can feel yourself tense up, and when you feel yourself tense up, tell yourself, relax your shoulders. I'm doing sort of a lot of detail, but I'm not. I'm leaving a little detail out because it's hard for you to see, difficult for you to see. Can I have my jacket, please? I'm getting a little chilly in here. It was hot. So I want this little part of the jawbone, the back part of the jawbone. I want it to be sort of level on both sides, but not perfect. Because in nature, nothing is exactly the same. Nothing is perfect. There's variations. Every skull, each human being, is the same, yet it's different. So it's not like if you draw one skull, you've drawn them all. They're different. I'm not going to use all my lines. The value of sketching, I want to show you something. I made a line here, then I changed that line to this one. So I'm going to erase the line I may not use. When I say I may not use, I may decide to use it later on. Nothing is etched in stone. Everything can change at all times. And what I'm trying to do, I want this drawing to feel like what I'm seeing. So I'm running into an issue here. I'll just let you know, which means I'm going to have to make changes. Because this space, I just made this space here on the jawbone feel right, how it feels to my eyes. Now I'm going back over here and see how this feels. Okay, so I'm going to have to raise that line up a little bit. So these little minor adjustments, they give life to your sketch. It gives life to your sketch, but even more, it makes it honest. It makes your drawing appear somehow believable. And it's because you've taken the time to make changes. And you're not just going to be satisfied so easily. And I can still make changes. Now this skull, even though I made it round, it's not going to be perfectly round. It's going to kind of go up like this. And I'm using contour drawing now. If you've been following me the last few weeks, we've been talking about contour and gesture. We always use contour and gesture drawing. And I'm contouring gesture, but I'm using my hash marks to describe the curve of the head. So I'm mixing contour with shading. And this part of the head, the top of the head, it's not so round, the top of the head. Feel the top of your head and you see it's not so round. But it all comes to the cranium. It comes to a little point here, everybody's head, but everybody's head is slightly different too. And the point might not be dead center. I'm going here on this side, and I'm doing contour now. Even though I'm shading, I'm doing contour as well. I'm doing contour drawing and shading at the same time. I'm thinking about more than one thing now. I'm thinking about I need to make sure that this part of the forehead looks like it's behind the front of the head. I want this angle to be more like this. It's a difficult angle here. So I just sketch that angle in, and then I can put the details in now. There's a little lump back here, a little bump. Then that's the front of the forehead that hits here. This is the back of the head. This would be the top of the head. This is the front. I'm going to shade this so that you know this is behind this part of the head. This is behind this part, this section. I'm going to get rid of my middle line that I placed there earlier. And now, at this stage, everything that I'm going to do is going to try to express what I see and how I see, my unique way of seeing things. And everybody has a unique way of seeing. And when I'm making corrections or changes or adjustments, that begins to tell a story. My lines tell the story of how I saw and what's important to me in the way that I saw this. So I want to flatten this part above the eye socket. It flattens out a little bit, so I'm going to use my shading with the side of my pencil to do that. Kind of lightly shade. Also, I'm deciding, I'm beginning to think about, well, when I get ready to finish the picture, how am I going to finish it? What is this drawing about now? How am I going to express whatever it is I'm trying to express? Whenever I draw, and this started in school, I didn't care what project. The reason why these lines here are curved, see, I'm using my knuckles to draw a curved line. That's on purpose, because I want to show that this thing is not flat like a table, the side of his head. And I'm still using my H pencil. You see how much use you can get out of it? This is a 2H though. See how much use you can get out of one pencil? Now just think if I use several pencils. I'm going to use some more pencils probably. Sometimes I'm using the point like I just did. Sometimes I'm using the side of the pencil. Like now. Just a little light hitting the top of the head, but not as much as hitting the front of the head. And I keep forgetting to get my H pencil. I may go and get it. You guys catch up. I'll leave this here for you to look at and catch up. I'm going to go get a different pencil, an H pencil. I think I know where it is. So remember, we was talking about line variation. You should start off barely touching the paper. Do not dig into the paper. We've said that so many times, but I want to reiterate things because there's so much to think about that's easy to forget. So this pencil set, I'm sure it's going to have an H. Yeah, here's an H. There's about 12 pencils in this set. So the reason why I wanted an H is because I wanted to shade the front of this skull. I want to lay flat this section here. There's a landscape to the face that I'm barely touching the paper here. I just want to mention that there is a landscape to the face. It's like looking at landmass, rolling hills. And the reason why I wanted this pencil is because I wanted a highlight. I wanted to leave the paper as a highlight. The paper itself, and I'm going to go back with my kneaded erasers to show you what I'm saying. So this H pencil is a harder lead. I can get some shades with it that I can't get with the 4H or the 2H. Going back to get the 2H, there's an area in the nasal cavity that comes around like that. Now I'm going to use a, and it goes back around and under. So there's another sinus area or whatever. I don't know what that's called actually. Right there. And then there's a cavity that goes back here even further. Gonna shade that underneath. I'm using 2H. 2H now. I'm going to use my thin hard line to push this back, this part of the skull. Excuse me. I'm going to get some softer leads in a minute, but not now. I'm going to go as far as I can with these H pencils. And because my paper have a lot of texture, I can go pretty far. Now I'm going to go to a B pencil. I think I'm going to use a 2B. A 2B is sort of like what you use in school, the average pencil. See how a point, you can really use a point to your advantage? Instead of just drawing everything using a point, a heavy line. Thin, heavy line can really help you. For instance, I'm going to draw this cavity back here with this 2B pencil. I'm not going to dig into the paper though. But because I've used the H pencils, excuse me, the 2B seems a little darker, a lot darker. I'm using a 2H pencil now. The point, I'm using the point of the pencil, now I'm using the side. So there's a cavity back here on this other side here. And this little cavity here that you can see, it's like, looks like I don't know what it is, so I'm not a doctor. It reminds me of sinuses. But it's behind the eyeball. It's going to be behind the eyeball. So and my shading is to show that this is an opening that goes back in space. When shading, don't dig the pencil into the paper. Just take your time. Decide when to use the point of the pencil and when to use the side of the pencil. That's one of the best lessons you can learn today. When to use the point and when to use the side. And if you're going to use the point, make sure that you have a point on the pencil. When you draw for a while, the pencil will lose this point. use my 2B. See, I'm not having to dig into the paper to make a dark line. I have a little bit too much space here on this side. So I'm going to try to see what I can do to hide that fact. I can't, at this point, I cannot make a whole lot of changes. Let this drop down some here. Now, this is why when you draw, like I tell kids, don't do a lot of talking when you're trying to make art if you're in a class, because you'll never know how good you can actually get if you're talking the whole time. You have to concentrate. You really don't know how good you are yet. No matter how good you are, you don't know how good you are, how good you actually are. This is the bridge of the nose. It's going to flap over like that. Now I have to, for the sake of time, I have to remember, don't get too involved. Because there's so much detail here. It's easy to get so involved and forget about time. And in my actual art and in your actual art, that's what you want to do. You want to forget about time and not think about time at all. Just draw. Just paint. It don't matter how long it's taken. What matters is the finished product. So I see a lot of things I would do differently, but for the sake of time, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to make any real changes. I have to make myself not make those changes that I see. So that's okay. When you're drawing and you see things, don't say you messed up. Say you see things you want to change. It's not that you messed up because you haven't finished. You can't mess up. That's a good thing. You need to remember you don't mess up in art. You just, either you finished it or you didn't. You're not finished yet. You have more work to do. You may not be pleased. You don't have to be pleased with everything you do. I of course, now I do want to be pleased with everything I do. I keep working on it. You know, as far as in my studio with my serious art, I keep working on it until I'm pleased. Sometimes I get to a point where, well, I'm not going to be pleased with this no matter what I do. And I just go on to the next thing. And hopefully learn something. Because since we can always get better, we're not going to always be pleased. It's really good, you know, when it's good to talk to people who know, who are on your level with art. They know at least as much as you or more. Those are the people. Now, it's okay to talk when the talk is going to make you better. And that's the value of art school. The value of art school for for people, for artists, is that you can get a critique, and you're never going to get better without that, without a critique. Because everybody sees things differently, and during the critique session, somebody's going to see something you don't see. Now, once you become like an older artist and you've had thousands of critiques, it don't matter no more, because you can critique yourself. But it takes a while for you to be able to critique yourself, a lot of study. By the way, tomorrow morning, the morning show on WDEF, if you're up, I think that's around 6:45 tomorrow morning, I'm going to be on television talking about this project that we're doing to help celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday and Black History Month. And we're going to be talking about art. And hopefully we'll have a good discussion. Splash students, if I haven't connected with you yet, make sure you connect with me. This is a cavity here, a sinus cavity, these little marks here. Because too, I think you have to be at least around 11 years old and older, but we're giving away free oil paints so that you can follow me live on Facebook and start experimenting with oil paints. Oil paints are the major paints. Not acrylics, but oil paints would be the major paints. I know acrylic painting is very popular now, which is good. But if you could learn how to paint with oils, you see how much more you can get out of a painting. See, I would want this space to be wider, what I'm drawing on now, but since it was just a little wide, I can see a lot of little things I want to do to this picture. So I'm trying to push, I'm going to use this H pencil, I'm going to push this cheekbone back a little bit. And there's some space that goes back underneath the eyeball, the eye socket. This is going back in space, what I'm working on now. I'm just using cross-hatching and cross-hatching to do that. Iantha is here. Those of you who know Iantha, she's here. She's in every class. She's lurking. She was lurking just a minute ago. You want to see the H pencil? You didn't believe it was H? Okay. Yeah. H, 2H, and 2B. Uh-huh. You see how much I can get with that, with these? Yep. So I just decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and put in some of these. Uh, I think it's about time I put in some teeth. I'm going to use 2H to do that. They're like triangles, round at the top. It's going back in space. So those of you who've been with me for a while, we talked about perspective. I'm just using my knowledge of perspective to do this quick. And I'm using the observation to see what these bottom teeth look like. They're sort of like upside down triangles. Remember, if you can draw the triangle, the circle, and the square, you can draw anything because that's what life looks like. I'm not counting the teeth because that doesn't matter if this is not scientific rendering. Now I'm going to get the 2B pencil so I can make some dark lines and do something with this space here. I'm just going to darken that. I think it works better just dark, make it dark. Use cross hatching. So I'm using the lead of my pencil, the pointed lead, to try to even speak about space, not just shading, not just shadows, but what's happening in space as well. So by making this dark, I hope that this makes it look like there's a cavity there. I know, in about 5 to 6 minutes. Well, we come down to the end. I'm just going to make a few choice lines. And watch what I'm going to do. I'm just going to stay with the 2B pencil because, kids, it's amazing what you can just do with your regular pencils that you draw with and that you used to write with and do your lessons with in school. And this is the time that I would probably normally, if I was just making art for art's sake and not as a lesson, I would go I will add some more pencils. Now I really want to use my hash marks to make a statement here. So I'm using the point of my pencil to make this statement about what's happening in space to this side of his head. And I'm going to go back with the eraser in a minute. The kneaded eraser. The eraser is pliable. I'm using the point of my 2B pencil. I'm going to sharpen it. Some parts are heavier than others. 2H. I'm going to leave my H pencil, put my H pencil down so that I try to push this jawbone back in space with hatch marks. Then this part of the jawbone with hash marks as well. And try to bring everything together by going back over this cavity with some hash marks. Same thing for this side. So now this picture is at a point that even though I'm getting ready to stop, you don't have to stop. You can work on this picture as long as you need to. You can always take some graphite off with your kneaded eraser. Splash students, you do have a kneaded eraser. We always try to make sure that you have the materials that you need to make your art. Okay, I'm getting ready to stop. Look what happens when I make these dark lines here. So now I'm just thinking about the picture. At some point, you have to just think about the picture, because your picture that you're drawing, because when people see your art, they're not going to see where it comes from. They're only going to see what you present to them. So make sure that the picture works on a certain level. And I'm only using 3 pencils here. So what that should tell you is that, I have 8 more pencils, well, 9 more pencils in my arsenal that I could use. So I'm making some lines darker to help this picture sit in space. I'm going to do a background real quick. I guess I'll use the 2B to put some shadows around his skull, to place it in space. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the skull up and see if there's something I want to do. Something else I need to do with it. Not really. Okay, I'm going to end it there. Put my name on it. So there you have it. We drew a skull. Thank you for joining us. I've enjoyed this class. Hope to see you again on Saturday from 11 to 12. And maybe we will begin talking about our project more on Saturday. But thank you for joining us. It's been fun. And remember, art is for everyone. Till next time, bye-bye.